날날 저게 무슨 날에 날라던고 놈도 나나 이어도 쳐라 저라고지라 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 이어도 쳐라 저라고지라 이어도 쳐라 저라고지라 한글로 가자
Hi, I'm Mark, and you are listening to the second episode of the Halla holla podcast. I feel like the second episode is really important because the first episode you're like, "Yay, I'm a podcaster / whatever," but then after that rush of getting the first one out, like the second one, you're like, "Oh, I have to like keep doing this."
Yeah.
And it's actually really it was kind of challenging and tough to just get started on the second one. So I want to thank you for being our second guest. But for today's episode, we are in the GEC, that is the Global Education City, located in Daejeong District on the southwestern part of the island. Now, I am in a spot that was referred to me for quite some time. I haven't been able to come until recently. When it comes to Chinese cuisine, the incredible Gungon, a space where you can, quote, empty your mind and fill your belly. I did not come up with that. That is actually the tagline that I saw online. And you can fill your belly full of delicious Chinese food, that is. And for our second guest, I have the honor of sitting down with the man who runs this incredible, dope spot. So thank you for joining us. Right off the bat, first question I ask all of our guests are, who are you and what brought you to Jeju?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm Shorne Baek. I run this humble establishment. I cook and I work by myself here. And what brought me to Jeju?
Yeah.
Not for any like specific reason, really. One of my best friends works at one of the schools nearby.
Okay.
And I'd been visiting him every once in a while for short holidays. And after a few years of that, we were just like, wow, this place is cool.
Where were you visiting from? Like,
In Gyeonggi-do,
okay.
our family still lives in Hwasong. So I was working like a bullshit job. Can I swear on this podcast? I swear a lot in real life.
That's fine. It's fine. I haven't decided yet. So just go ahead, man.
Okay.
Just do your thing. Yeah, that's fine.
So I was working a stupid job, and then after I finished that job, I decided to come down because I didn't have anything lined up after.
Yeah.
And I got my first job at Bang and Taco.
Yeah, okay.
Because
Yes.
David and us, we were friends.
That's another local spot.
Yeah.
Really great.
Shout out to Bang and Taco.
Yeah, Bangin' Taco.
Love
Come
you,
on. I'd love to have you on.
And so I started working there, and I moved here, and I haven't gone back since.
When was that? When did you
That was
officially move in?
2018,
Okay.
I think, in October-ish.
Okay. But then you you said your family was on the mainland, but where were you at beforehand? Before you came on to the mainland with your family?
We lived in the mainland since, I think, 2012.
Okay.
So we'd moved around within the mainland.
Okay.
And then before that, we were in China.
Okay. All right. Tell me about that. China, living there.
Living in China was interesting. I think we moved there maybe 2005 or 6.
Okay.
I was probably just turning 12 or something. I was
Yeah.
just a kid.
Yeah.
And
Where at in China specifically?
Yantai.
Okay.
It's really close. It's like, like the chicken goozle
Yeah.
on the map.
Yeah.
So if you just hop the goozle across the ocean, that's where Yantai is. So
Right.
it's like an hour, 10 minutes from Incheon.
Okay.
So really close. We went there. My dad at the time was working in a company that required him to relocate a lot.
Okay.
And that was one of our big relocations. We'd moved from the States to Yantai. And I went to school there at an international school. That's actually where I met my friend that works here.
Okay.
He used to be my high school English teacher.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. You like get in with your teacher and you're like first name basis then. That's such a cool feeling. Yeah.
Far more the first name basis.
Yeah.
His kids run at me every time I see him. And
That's awesome.
and then I went to middle school and high school there. That was a really important part of my life, I would say. Just because China, to people that don't live in China or that part of Asia, I would say, is such a blast of like cold water to the face. Because like I grew up in like a suburban Midwest town in Illinois.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
yeah.
It's called like Buffalo Grove.
Yeah, okay.
You know?
Yeah, that's I've never been there, but that sounds super suburbs.
I literally live next to a White Castle.
Okay. Nice. Okay.
I never went there.
Wow. Good for you.
That's how suburban and like vanilla it was.
Yeah. Yep.
And then moving to China where it's like the Wild West, you know. I think that really put a mark on my life, like a really strong impact on like how to see things differently, how to approach things differently, be more adventurous. And,
right.
My love for Chinese food began in China.
Okay.
Hence why I only cook things that I want to eat.
Hey, so. That's actually a great philosophy, I think, when it comes to making food.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Because I'm convinced a lot of people that cook, not all of them, there are some great cooks out there, but a lot of restaurants, especially in tourist parts of Jeju, I'm convinced that they've never tasted their own food. Like there's no way you can humanly accept that this is okay to sell.
His name escapes me right now, but he is the chef of Gordon Ramsay. What's his name? Like the guy that like taught Gordon Ramsay how to be a chef.
Taught him.
Yeah.
Marco Pierre.
Yeah, there we go. Yes.
I love that guy.
Yeah. So that's exactly what he said. He said, I remember just watching a video of him, an old clip, when he was like, man, maybe in his 30s or 40s. And that's exactly what he said. He's like, don't serve food you wouldn't eat yourself. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly.
So I guess you're really onto something.
Yeah.
And that leads me on to my next question is, and you've already answered it, Chinese cuisine, that you really developed your love of Chinese food. And then you just, you wanted to learn how to cook it. You wanted to learn how to prepare it. I mean, when was it that you were a fan into someone who decided, you know what, I want to make this kind of stuff?
That's it. I'll go more in depth to my background in Chinese cooking.
Yeah.
So my love for it obviously started when I lived there as a kid. The stuff you eat as a growing up is I would say the most impactful. Like anything in your life, anything you do as a teenager, anything you do in your adolescence, will have the greatest impact throughout the rest of your life. And because I had such a strong reference point of what it's supposed to taste like, you can't be 100% sure what you're cooking is right unless you know what it's supposed to taste like.
Right.
Yeah. Unless you've invented a new dish from scratch.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really cooking Chinese food in China because I was a kid. I'd always followed my mom around in the kitchen and helped out and stuff. But it wasn't until after I left China, I started living by myself and stuff. I was like, man, I really miss eating ABC from China.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I was like, how do I make that? And so I was trying to remember what it tasted like. So oftentimes I would look up the recipe on a Chinese site.
Yeah.
Or I would try to just kind of figure it out or remember what I'd seen someone do somewhere.
Sure.
And then so it really started at home and going back to what I was saying about food that I want to eat. So it really just started out with me cooking for myself and my family and oh, Mom, remember this thing that we used to eat? I learned how to make it and then we'd enjoy it together.
Yeah. I mean, that's wild to me because it's let's say even a lot of us who are away from home and we taste something or smell something that bing, it kind of triggers something. And you're like, whoa, that's the taste that I haven't had in a long time. I mean, so you're just kind of working with food as during this creation process. Like you were just making dishes until something like clicked and you're like, aha, that's it. That's the taste. I mean, I'd be almost like kind of almost doubting my own memory. You know what I mean? Like almost like psyching myself out or whatever.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
That's why you gotta keep eating, man. I think it's so important. Like to be a good musician, you gotta keep listening to music.
Yeah.
You can't be in an echo chamber. You're just gonna make garbage music.
Yeah.
Probably most of the time.
Yeah.
You gotta keep eating good food and like challenging yourself. You can't lie to yourself and be like, this is close. No, it's not.
Okay.
You have like it's either it or it's not.
Yeah.
So I think I've actually probably like frustrated myself and some customers throughout the way because I'm more creatively inclined than business inclined.
Yep.
So I've like taken things off the menu that people are like, why don't you make that anymore? I was like, I don't like it. That's not good. It's not good enough.
Yeah. And people are like, what are you talking about? It's delicious. But you're like,
and then I'm just like, you're lying.
You're an artist at heart.
You're a liar.
Yeah. It's garbage. You can just like throw it in the trash can. Oh, how did it feel when you, bring back an example you just said, is you were making something and you're like, hey, Mom, like, I think I think I made this. Like, check this out. How did that feel when she tasted it and she's like, you got it. That's it.
You know what? It's kind of, my mom is much less like rigid about that than compared to me. I'm way more analytical and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm one of those like douchebags who's like coffee and like have a timer and like I have to know like if I do it from here to there, the acidity will increase and blah blah.
Well, I told you when I saw you cooking, you were like an alchemist almost. Just like it was almost like I was in medieval. You know what I mean? Just putting these chemicals together. I'm like it is chemistry actually. But yeah.
I love food science.
Yeah.
But things like that. So my mom is actually like, if it's close, she'll usually be very nice.
Yeah,
she's just like,
that's
oh,
mom.
This is great.
Yeah,
this is great.
Yeah.
But then if it's like something, actually, I think the closer it is, the more unforgiving she will be.
Okay.
So like they say, like 0 to 90% is pretty easy. And then from the 90% to 100% is the hard part.
Right.
So my mom, like, I think it's like something like the uncanny effect, something like that. It's like my mom will be like, "Oh, this is great. This is fine. We'll eat it.
Yeah.
Make that again next time." And then like if I get really close, I'll know because she'll start like picking at it. She'll be like, "Oh, like okay, now I'm reminded of what it's supposed to taste like, rather than just being like, this is a good thing that whatever made."
Right. Because you weren't just like doing like a one shot kind of thing. You're like, "Oh yeah, good, great job," and just whatever.
Yeah.
You kept at it and maybe she just saw that too and she's like, all right, maybe I'll give him the.
Yeah. And it's not always like that. It'll depend on like, for anyone really, not just my mom, but it also will depend on me. Like, do I want to keep like,
right.
I'll make this dish, like I'll make like a cabbage stir fry.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't taste right, I'm like, man, I'll forget it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, it's interesting because Angela Lau, she referred me to this place. So I trust her judgment. And
shout out to Angela.
Shout out to Angela. Hope to have you on. And then when I came here, the very first time I came here, there were two folks and they were like speaking Chinese. And I'm like, oh, that's a good sign. And I saw like your menu. Like how many items? It's small.
Put me on the spot. Man.
Right. It's small. It's like it's easily, I think it's under 10. I feel like that's another good sign. Just like a very, it's not all over the place, just a very limited menu. And I got to say, at least for the past two times that I've come and eaten here, it's kind of like a soul food that I've never discovered.
Oh.
Okay. So the thing is we'll come and we'll eat here. And you'll give us a little extra because, you got the hookup. But we'll eat here. And then I go home and I told you both times, the last two times, I'm like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to take a nap.
Yeah.
And it's one of those naps where it's like the deepest deep sleep I've had in a long time. One of those naps you're just like, you're like shivering kind of, you know what I mean? In the middle of the day, you're just, it's just such like, I go like bear hibernation mode, which is a good thing. Trust me. On the couch, just out. No dreams, and then you just kind of wake up and you don't like know who you are
Like a
for a
fever,
second.
like a fever dream.
Kind of, not, but there's no dreams. It's just like
Yeah.
just such like a. I feel like I cocoon up almost.
You shake that violently when you nap.
Well, I mean, maybe that's something else. But I wake up and then I'm just like, I just feel like a new person. I don't know.
I know what you're saying. That's
But
that's
that's-
food coma nap.
That's the food coma, but it's like food.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh,
like
I
euphoria.
I'm very grateful that you think
Yeah.
that way, because there are certain foods where I will like clear the rest of my day out if I know I'm gonna eat this today.
Yeah.
Like I'm wearing loose fucking sweatpants. I'm gonna go and
Yeah.
eat the shit out of this.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then, I'm not meeting nobody.
Yeah.
after
Right.
this.
Right.
I'm taking,
turning the phone off.
Yeah,
That's it.
I'm watching some YouTube and dozing off. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's what you watch the YouTube, and what I like to say is you just hear the S's when people are talking, and then you hear, and you're just like, out. Yeah. Well, that's that's the effect of his food.
Oh,
it's
good to know.
amazing.
Good
It's
to know.
very good. It's very good. So going back to just the going into Chinese cuisine, and the last couple dishes that we had, you said is a bit more like street food style. Which is interesting.
It's kind of a hard, kind of specific term. I still haven't like thought of
Okay.
a way to describe it.
Right.
But it's like a somewhere in between street food and like a proper restaurant.
Uh-huh.
And you'll see this a lot in like Central Asia.
Okay.
It's like a place where the people that live there will go eat every day.
Yeah.
So it'd be like equivalent for Korea, like a 국밥집 or like a kimbap nara or whatever. It's like it's not quite street food because it's not an indulgent,
Right.
like salty drinking thing.
Right.
But it's also not like a sit down. You don't want to like if you have like guests coming over. This might be not like the best place to take someone.
Okay.
'Cause this is like something. That's what I wanted to offer. Actually, it's like somewhere you could just eat like by yourself, wearing a hoodie, just like.
I think that is
comforting
almost
food.
like a comfort soul food almost, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what like the exact term of that is, but yeah, it is that in between the street food and like the restaurant food.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a really nice thing to have for a lot of people. That I ask people all the time, like, do you guys cook at home? What do you guys eat at home? I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we don't cook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, what are you talking about? Like, well, no, we don't cook. We just boil pasta sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, it would be great to have just a spot like this. I mean, actually, it's not too far of a drive for us, but I think it's lovely for anybody living anywhere to just have a joint that they just
Yeah.
go in. And you know what? I kind of described it too, like coming in here. It's kind of like Cheers. You're familiar with Cheers, the show?
You know what's crazy?
Huh.
You're not the first person to describe this place
Hey,
as Cheers.
That's what I'm talking about. You know, I just opened the door and you're like, "Oh," what's up? You know, just like shouting names and just like,
what's his face? Tad.
yeah.
What's his
Danson?
name?
Ted
Ted
Danson.
Danson.
Yeah.
Ted Danson.
The bartender, the barkeep. Because it was cool because when we came the last time, I also kind of got a Cheers vibe because there were three very different situations going on. There was PD and I, we were eating, and then there was a young Korean couple, they were eating as well, and then you had two native English speakers just coming in for pickup, and they all felt really comfortable. And you were, and this is not a bad thing. You were a different person to each of them. You were different to us compared to the folks that came in to pick up, to just this young couple. You were speaking in Korean to them. Is that exhausting? Is it natural for you? Because you did it so naturally, but it was quite different in the way that you interacted with people. I mean, I think that's part of the power of why people say it's Cheers. But yeah.
Well, it's not easy being a sociopath, Mark. No, I think it's interesting that you would ask that. Most people ask me something like, is it exhausting to deal with people all the time?
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be.
Yeah.
But the specificity of your question of like, is it exhausting to go back and forth? Is interesting because I hadn't really thought about it until you asked me. Because I grew up in such multicultural environments
Yeah.
where that has never been a thing that I had to do. It's never like, oh, I gotta go to Korean mode, I gotta go Chinese mode, I gotta go to English mode. Like,
Yeah.
like language is just a form of how am I going to communicate with this person,
Yeah.
and it just happens to sound different.
Right.
So it's not really about like my social blah blah blah. Like I feel like mannerisms and attitude,
Demeanor and-
yeah,
yeah.
it's a part of the language. So
Okay.
it's not like a thing that I'm like consciously doing. Maybe if it was like like elders or something. But I'm nice
Right.
to like all old people. It doesn't matter like who, like where you're from, right? And so yeah, it's not exhausting in that aspect.
Cool. Well, you did it. It was just kind of interesting to just observe you work. I mean, inside and outside of the kitchen, I had the chance to actually do some filming behind the kitchen, which you were very really thankful for that. And I got to say, your kitchen setup, I love it. It's not. I don't know. I feel like simplistic is. I don't want to say that in like a negative connotation. Like it's just you go in there. You have the two burners. You got a big wok. You got a little wok. You got 3 or 4 knives set up, nice and shiny and sharpened. You can tell they're ready to go. That's about it.
Yeah,
I love
that's
it.
pretty much it.
Yeah.
There's a few reasons for the setup. Biggest reason is I was consulting a bunch of people. One of them being David Cave from Bacon Taco. He's
Yes.
been working in restaurants and running restaurants since he was like in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And helping out in his mom's shop since he was a kid.
Okay.
So his entire life has been based around restaurants
Yeah.
and being in a kitchen and
Right.
stuff like that. That's his, that's what he knows. So of course, and he's like, such a great friend and also an advisor.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to Dave for a long time and asking him like, what do you think I should like set up the kitchen to be like, and asking him questions and stuff. And he said like, Shorne, like you're skilled enough to figure out what the workflow is,
Okay.
but he said, make sure you just don't go all out and get like the flashiest,
Okay.
like newest whatever stuff. Like you don't
Bells
need-
and whistles and-
exactly.
yeah.
So I think that's what really helped me like approach it in a minimalist way. Like,
Yeah.
okay, if I buy like, I don't know, a $5,000 stove, it's gonna look sick and probably have some like
Yeah.
cool features and
Yeah.
stuff. It's gonna tell me like how exactly hot my wok
Yeah,
is
yeah,
or something
yeah.
like that.
Exactly,
But like,
yeah.
but like this is just an industry standard, whatever like ajumas use. Like it's
Yeah.
fine. It
Yeah.
blows out fire.
And it's not one of those things like, oh, we're trying to go simplistic and minimalist. You're like, no, it's because
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if someone asks me, I'll probably be like, it's a minimalist.
actually that's what we're going for here.
yeah. But it also helps with like decluttering.
Yeah.
There have been challenges, but I like to work with limitations a lot. That's something I like to do. And being creative and problem solving. That kind of stuff is like, that's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
I do that with music all the time, just to give myself a limitation. Oftentimes it came from just like not having whatever I needed to do it. So just like, jury rigging things together.
Yeah. I love that. Just MacGyvering, jerry rigging, and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
pray nothing blows up
Yeah.
too large.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
this kitchen is kind of based on that. And also, like David was saying, like, it's an investment too. So there's a financial aspect behind it. So it all works out. And this layout's changed, and I've put things in different places over time. And I think that's really just kind of like, water flowing through the rock and like
Nice.
smoothing it over,
Nice. Super Asian. Love it. That's fine. We can say it.
Yeah.
Look at us. We're allowed to say that stuff. So speaking of being super Asian,
Yeah.
I'd like to.
Hello.
Oh God. I'll keep it in. And see what happens. Is we are drinking some fantastic tea, and
Yeah.
I've noticed that for the other customers that have been here, you're just like, hey, would you like some tea? And you'll give them a little take home container, or just serve it right on the spot.
Yeah.
And you just do it. So, and if you look around, I mean, if you look at the space itself, within these incredibly built, amazing tables, it's like these transparent, almost cabinet tables. And then also the setup there's just teaware and teacups. So you like tea?
I do like tea.
You do like tea. Tell us about it. It's delicious, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't cultivate it, but thank you. The tea thing kind of happened. It wasn't like a conscious decision when I opened the restaurant, but it was a happy, like the universe saying, hey, you got to incorporate tea. So how that happened was I lived just up the street before I moved recently in a small studio apartment by myself. And a few years ago, I noticed they were doing some major construction on a lot of land that had nothing on it. It was just,
Sure.
just weeds and just
Happening a lot around the island, right?
overgrown
Yeah.
stuff everywhere. And they were making this new building. It was huge. It was one of those like warehouse looking ones, but
Yeah.
it was much nicer.
Yeah.
And after some time, I noticed this older gentleman in like kind of like, the informal hanbok, kerang hanbok. It's not
yeah.
not quite. It's like kind of what the monks would wear
Yeah.
sometimes.
Looks super comfortable.
Oh, I
Yeah.
want to get some so
yeah.
bad.
Same. Yeah.
But I noticed an older gentleman wearing glasses and like walking around like this, kind of like
Yeah.
And I was like, huh, who's that guy?
You want to get to know that dude. Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
that guy? And
Yeah.
I didn't think much of it. And then I think after like probably half a year, I can't remember. But by the time the construction finished, the sign had come up and it said something about tea. I was like, oh, it's like another cafe. Because it
Alright.
looked really nice. And
Yep.
I was like, oh, it's another like cool cafe or whatever. And I didn't think much of it.
Thank you.
Because I didn't know anyone that worked there or whatever. And then one day my friend flew in from the mainland to hang out. And, I was like, we got some time. You want to go check this cafe out? It's like, sure. And we passed by and it was like locked. And it looked really cool. There was like a bunch of stuff. It was like really high ceilings. There was like these tables were in a much better home before here. And just like hundreds of like cakes of tea, like the discs they have.
Yeah.
Like on display.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, what is this place? And
Yeah.
I was like, well, he's not here, so we'll just go. And then as we're leaving, that older gentleman I saw us, and like in a really like, like Gyeongsangdo accent, like, oh, 안녕하세요. And then he's like, who are you guys? And I was like, oh, we're just like, like, we'll come back next time. We don't want to like, I was like, no, I insist. Like, I insist. You have to come. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I guess we have to now.
Yeah.
And then so he opens the door, oh, sit down. And then we go in, and he has this like, it's like this big. It's
Yeah.
like a slab of volcanic rock that he had custom carved out into a tea tray. So like this, the functionality
So,
of this,
yeah.
but carved out from a giant
So
slab.
porous and everything. And
Porous,
yeah,
but then also like it's kind of like carved out in the middle, and there's a
That's
drain,
awesome.
and then there's like a valve.
I can't imagine how much something like that costs. Anyways,
It's wild,
gorgeous.
So
yeah.
he's got everything, and then we're just like, oh my god, this place is amazing.
Yeah.
And we start talking, and he gives us tea, and I'm like, I never had tea like this before, and blah blah.
This is no cutesy cafe we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That you thought. Yeah.
And after a bit, we're like, we got to get going. I'll see you around. I live across the thing. And so for a year, I would go visit Mr. Moon. That was his name. I'd go visit Mr. Moon, and we just talk. He'd give me tea, and we became really close friends.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about tea. I think I've had a lot more tea that like people would never dream of being able to
Yeah.
experience, and I didn't know because I was just like so new to it.
Thank goodness you just happened to stroll in and just check it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, this tea is from like 1978. Let's check
Jeez.
it out." And then I was like, "Oh,
That's like going to like wine tasting or something and getting like the finest
Pretty much.
70s wine or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is pretty good. It smells like dirt. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's like $20,000 for a cake. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
You're just killing them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I learned about tea through that. And then we became friends. And he eventually wanted to move out of Jeju. And he put the place out for lease. And because the people that are currently there now have nothing to do with tea.
Right.
He ended up having all this cool furniture and all this decor that he had made for the spot that he was like, we're going to trash this if they don't use it.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, he left in June and I opened my shop in July and I started construction in May.
Yeah.
So it was around the same time. I was like, Mr. Moon, do you think like I could use some of the wood here? And he was like, oh yeah, take everything you need.
Yeah.
Like it's going to end up in a landfill anyway. You might as well see if you can salvage it.
Huh.
So what we ended up doing was ripping out a lot of the cabinetry,
Yeah.
a lot of the wood, a lot of the decor. We moved these tables, which I like had to force payment on him because
Right.
Mr. Moon was like,
Because he was like, oh, we're just going to toss them. You're like,
yeah,
no.
He was like, oh, just gonna like give it away or
Yeah.
something. I was like, and he was like, sell it. And I was like, oh, I'll buy them from you. He's like, you're like my son's age. You're like, just fine, just take it. I was like, no. I paid $200 for these two custom made tables, and these are probably worth like $4,000
Easily,
together.
easily. Really. Yeah.
And so yeah, almost every piece of wood here is like upcycled.
That's awesome. It's awesome to see it in action. Like you hear about it and
Yeah, and I really wanted to give everything a second life.
yeah.
And not just use it to just whatever, like, smash together into like shells and whatever, but like preserve what it did, I think that's really important. Like that stuff over the shelves over there.
Right.
I don't think there might be some B-roll of it.
Yeah.
But that was used to hold other like tea stuff.
Right. I can see that. Sure.
So I was like, oh, well, like, this is like tea stuff. And like, it also signified, being there with Mr. Moon. It's just like such a peaceful place. He's got like a little like bonsai garden and just
That's
like,
awesome.
It's like birds and it's like, he was like,
Well, you called him, I remember you said he's like your unregistered therapist.
yeah,
Almost.
yeah. And I think it was, him just listening.
That's cool.
And I don't think enough people realize how important it is to just like not only say the things, like it's emphasized that you should say what's on your mind and really, but like the person listening is also like just like shut the fuck up and listen to what this person has to say. Like, and Mr. Moon taught me that.
Yeah.
Like because people mostly will just figure things out
Right.
as they're saying it. So I would end up going there and like we drink tea for like 8 hours.
That's great.
And I would just like talk to him and he'd be like, huh. And then by the end of it, I'd be like, I think I figured it out.
Yeah, he says nothing, and you're like, "Thanks, Mr. Moon. Thanks for that advice." And he's like, "He said nothing."
He's going home.
You
He's
like figured it all
That boy
out.
was crazy.
that boy is crazy. No, I think I agree, and I'm guilty of this too. Is when someone's talking to you and they're giving you issues or problems, then your problem solving mind kind of sets in. And you want to help them, right?
Yeah.
So you're just like, well, you got to do this, and actually, maybe
Yeah.
you're, and it's just like.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah, and a lot of times they just want to be heard, and they just want you to be like, yeah, that guy sucks. He does suck. The end. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm guilty of that as well. Well, the thing is, we've been talking about this place and your food and the furniture and just the whole ambiance and this whole thing. But here's the thing: is that that's it, man. You're shutting down. You're closing your doors.
Yeah, all this build up.
All this build up to like, well, you're not going to be able to see it. Well, you will be for a very short time. But we got to get into it, if you don't mind me asking. How could you be so selfish? No, I'm joking. You're taking this away from all of us. You're talking about my soul food and I just found you but in all seriousness, what was your decision? Why?
This will be a year and a half ish since I've opened the shop.
Yeah.
And I opened it with the intention of learning. I set very clear goals for myself when I opened the restaurant.
Okay.
One, because I'd never done it before, and I've heard like horror stories and like, older 사장님, like, hyungs and stuff would tell me like, oh yeah, be wary of this, and also like things that like they don't tell me, like I see kitchen people with like health problems all the time, and like just their like social lives are destroyed, and I there's an element of me that like respects that,
Yeah.
like the devotion to their work, but also it's like I don't want that,
Right.
and I wanted to see like if I set very certain goals for myself, could I pull it off in
Right.
X amount of time?
Right.
So the goals were like, okay, make sure I like what I'm doing.
Yep.
Profit is not the goal.
Okay.
Don't burn all the money that I put into it. Let's like maybe like break even.
Right.
Was the goal.
Right.
And like try and learn everything I can by running a business by yourself and understanding the struggles, benefits, and like what kind of like like I mentioned earlier, like problem solving things that I'd have to like learn, putting myself in uncomfortable situations, things I'm not good at. And sometimes that was by decision. Sometimes it's just like put on you because it's uncomfortable.
Right.
But then I think at a certain point, like maybe the beginning of fall or summer last year, I started to notice that like, I'm like kind of bored now. And me being bored is it's like my brain telling me like, well, you should sit down and think about something. So I did, and then I realized like, okay, what's got me bored? And it's like, oh well, I'm not learning
Yeah.
anymore,
Right.
which was one of the main goals.
Was
right?
it like you felt like you were just going through the motions, maybe?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I was like getting up late and just like whenever dragging my feet to work, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. I could like sling out orders. And I have a very inquisitive and curious mind all the time. So I'm like constantly like feeding like the dopamine hunger, like knowledge machine.
Sure.
And I was like, wow, that's cool. I want to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And then I noticed I was kind of like, I make the same stuff all the time. And like, I don't really have inspirations to pull from. And a part of that is largely like my own, like that's something I need to figure out for myself. But I also noticed my environment was also a part of it.
Okay.
Like Jeju is a pretty small place.
Sure.
And it has lots of cool things and culture to offer. But as someone who is a creative person, I noticed there wasn't as a large of a spectrum of creative like stimulus for me.
Okay.
You go to like a cafe or like a restaurant, and it's like copy paste everything, right? It's not like, oh, I love doing this and I want to give the best version of this to people, and it's like
Social media, got to take the photo.
exactly. It's not that. It's like it becomes like what you said. It's just like, oh, that guy made money doing this. Let's copy him, and then like 20 more of the fucking shit just comes out, and it's just like,
Yeah.
But that's what people want. And so being in that kind of environment is difficult to. It becomes difficult to like challenge yourself. Like I was saying earlier, like you have to have good food to know what good food tastes like.
Yeah.
To challenge your own palate. And
Yeah.
like the places I love going to most are like you go to places and it just like melts your mind. Just like I don't know how they made this.
Right.
It's so good.
Right.
I don't like if my brain. I get frustrated. Because it's like most things you can taste, and like after you've been in the kitchen for a while and like pay attention to what you're doing, you can kind of figure out like, okay, they probably did this, and it's a really good version of this. But sometimes, very, very rarely, you go to a restaurant and like I don't know what kind of magic sorcery they're doing in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah.
And that excites me, but I haven't had that in Jeju.
Oh, at all? At all?
Not that I can remember.
Okay.
Maybe once or twice.
Okay.
But I can't like it's not happening enough for me.
Okay, my question is this: is like I remember. I mean, you said that okay, I set out to do, I had a clear set of goals, right? When I wanted to open up this spot. Is that in part, you said like you felt like you were going through the motions or getting a little bored. Do you think it's in part because like you've set and made those goals and like that's it? Do you feel like those goals were met?
I would say it's a combination of both me being understimulated and also like goals being met, and like something like this is pretty kind of subjective to myself, right?
Sure.
Like someone could be like, oh, you could run this much more efficiently. You could have staff. You could blah, blah, blah. You could make more money.
Sure.
But to me, it's like, well, it checked off what did I learn? I learned how to run a business by myself.
You did it your way.
Yeah, I did it my way. And then like, I think for me personally, I just like kind of reached the point where I was like, I think I've gotten all the, substance out of, I've extracted everything I can from this experience, and it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And that, being like, that being kind of triggered by the lack of like things to, I don't even like eat out on my days off. Out as in like go somewhere new. I love doing that by myself. Just going somewhere and just being like, sit down and eat something and like analyze and stuff.
Right.
Like most days I just go to like the sundubu joint and just like pay like $8 and like, this is f***ing great sundubu, and I just go home. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Because like I've been like burned so many times by mediocre places. And I don't blame them. I'm not criticizing them. I'm not like throwing shade at them. Maybe a little bit.
So you pretty much answered the next question I was going to ask. It was it a hard decision to decide to kind of like end this part of your life? But it seems like it sounded like a pretty natural transition for you because it's kind of like, you can see, and what we like when we come in here and what other people can see is like you really put in a lot of care to the space, to the ambiance, to your food. So it is kind of like your child, your baby. You're not like putting it down, but that can be a lot of folks. Their first business or their first venture, and I'm not sure if you're even in this area, but sometimes it's taking too much away from them, so they have to exit. So it's a really hard choice, but it seems like this is not that hard of a choice for you. It's kind of like a natural transition.
I would say I don't think it was an easy decision.
Okay.
I wasn't like losing sleep over it.
Right.
But I am a very slow processor at nature. For thoughts and problems or even like nice things, I really like to take some time to process it in my brain. And I think from past experiences, I've learned that I'm not good under pressure and like acting by reflex. Not because I always make the bad decision when I do, but there's a higher window of, like mistake
error.
Making. Higher window for error. And I think I like the comfort of really taking the time of like, asking myself from different perspectives, like, what would happen if I closed? And then kind of going through the steps of like, this could happen, this might happen, and then going through those things, see if I like those things. And then rather than like going on an impulse, which, a lot of people we're kind of like programmed to do so sometimes. And I think if I just got like fed up with work one day and just went like, fuck it, I'm not going to do the restaurant anymore, I think it might have been the same end result.
Yeah.
Like I decided to close anyway, but I think I wouldn't like the aftermath of like, should I have really done this?
Right.
And there's a certain like cloud of anxiety that will sit with you forever.
Right.
And me kind of like slowly and like naturally processing this over a longer, like it's been a few months since this has been on my mind.
Yeah.
naturally processing this has allowed me to make a decision, and it feels right.
Okay.
So I don't feel like there's any shroud of mystery.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great. I mean, it's great. I think I don't know. I can't speak for you, but I think for a lot of folks, it doesn't happen that often where you make like a major decision, and then you're like, you know what, it feels right. I think there's a lot of folks they regret, or they kind of just, maybe it was the right decision or not, but they keep looking back whether what school they decided to do, or when to switch jobs, or when to end a job, or something. But to get to that point where you just like, it wasn't easy, but it feels right. I admire that. That's awesome to get to that point. Yeah. I think a lot of people would love to just make such a major decision and just feel like it was the right thing to do. So, what is next for Shorne? What is going on?
It's a good question. That's the question now.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Because the doors are shutting next Friday?
Yeah. So
Last
it'll
day.
be the 24th, I think.
24th?
The last 24th of February.
I'm going to try to get this episode out as soon as possible so people can hear it and then come.
You should have it released on the 25th.
Oh, yeah. We talk
People-
about,
Yeah, and they have to wait 50 minutes to get into the part where
I'll get a
mention
lot of views and angry emails, but hey, get that feedback,
But 24th will be the last day of business, and I'll take the weekend to clear some stuff out.
Sure.
After that, I think this is also related to me being a slow processor.
Okay.
Is I found myself working best when I have just one thing on my plate at a time. So
Yeah.
this is something my uncle told me when I was a kid. He was like, just worry about the things that are in front of your nose. And that stuck with me. Like, he told me that I was like when I was like 10 or like something.
Nice.
And it stuck with me. It's still. And I was like, every time I'm like, just like overwhelmed every once in a while with, the world's like, here, take this too. And I was like, okay, well, I have these things to deal with. And then, like, what's now? What do I need to do now?
Right.
So now was, I got to figure out how to get rid of the shop and do it in a way where I feel good about it. And, whatever logistic stuff is taken care of. And when that's done, I think I will be thinking about what I'm doing next, because it's not very urgent.
Yeah.
So I think right now the plan is to take however many weeks.
Some me time,
just
treat yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just absolutely turning it to liquid, for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I think being bored in a good way, being bored is like something I haven't felt in a while. Not bored in the sense of like career-wise,
Yeah, what you said earlier, but
just as a human being,
Right.
like I miss that.
yeah.
I haven't been bored in a long time, and you do such interesting things as a human when you're bored. Like you think about like, it's like, oh, I wouldn't have like doodled this picture on the wall if I wasn't bored. Or,
Yeah. Well, that's because you need to have like a 3-hour lecture at university.
Exactly.
And that's when you start doodling. That's when you make the good stuff.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, I should release this as an album. This is great
Yeah.
poetry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I want to get to that point. That's the next step, me being bored for a bit. And then I think from there, I'll probably figure out what I want to do next.
Nice.
I think it'll involve some kind of learning.
Okay. Now, but the thing is too, I don't know if you need to learn that much, but your background is in music.
It is in music.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Would you think just dabbling around in that in your free time when you're done here?
I thought about it.
You're a hard man to research because just to research and learn about our guests. If you go on his social media, which I'll probably put somewhere, it's super artistic. I mean, it's not boring. is that I don't mean this in a bad way. You've got these musical clips. There's a lot of imagery, a lot of, I mean, I can see the artist in you with that kind of stuff. Would you get back into that kind of area?
I don't think I was ever like into it in the sense that like I never tried to pursue it as a job. And it's been on my mind, but it was a little discouraging seeing my peers going through so much hardship.
Okay.
Not all the time.
Yeah.
There's some fortunate people who are killing it right now.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like there's an oversupply of musicians and creatives where, especially right now, you become disposable.
Yeah.
And being constantly on the edge of like, if I don't make enough music or if I don't produce enough, blah, 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 I'm going to be out of work.
Yeah.
Like that's not something I want looming over my head constantly. And that's just me. Some people strive, like, you know, they thrive.
It's clearly just you. I mean, you described how you wanted to run this business. Same thing, right? You didn't want to have that looming urgency.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that kind of discouraged me from pursuing music as a career.
Right.
At least for now.
Yeah.
If there was a way I could like brainstorm music into a more kind of stable work, I think I'd be interested in that, but I haven't figured out what that is yet. I keep playing music. I play music here when there's no people around.
Nice.
Play music at home. I try to write stuff at home. But I think as long as I'm doing something creative, I'll be happy to keep doing it. And if I get to do it as a job, even better. Like cooking is the same as music to me. It's just you get to eat it.
Right.
Rather than listen to it. It's just a different whole.
Sensory. Yeah, it's a different whole. I like that. It's a different whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, about me pursuing music, I think I might be interested in meeting some people who might want to do something together. Or, you know, maybe like if I get bored, I'll like go like hit up some people who have venues and I'm like, hey, can I play just by myself on like a Thursday night?
Cool.
And just, you know, just for me.
Yeah.
And I might do it to that extent, but I don't think I'll pursue anything music related in Jeju.
Got it. Understood. Well, Shorne, I wish you the best, man. I mean, you're not even thinking about that right now. You're just thinking about closing up shop, as you said, whatever's in front of your nose, one step at a time. But for those folks watching and listening, closing the final date to enjoy this soul food is the 24th. So come on out, eat your fill before Shorne kicks you out for good. And man, I just want to thank you for being the second guest here. And it was really amazing to hear your story. And where can we find you at? Like
on the internet?
Yeah, on the interwebs.
I don't know. I mean, probably like Instagram.
Nice.
I mean, I'm very hard
Search
to
him out.
I'm
Yeah.
very hard to get hold of.
Yeah.
And I like it that way.
That's why you're so cool, man. Those are the coolest kind of people, you know? They make it difficult without trying.
It's a shroud of bullshit.
Yeah.
That's the illusion.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We haven't like officially like done this yet, but it would be cool, you know, to have one of your songs playing as we end up here. So who knows if hopefully you can send us send us a little something. So hopefully that's what you're listening to right now. If not, Shorne's a terrible person.
Royalty free.
Yeah, exactly. No copyrights. So thank you. If you're watching, if you're listening, leave a comment below. Feel free to, not just feel free to, please subscribe. Actually, that'll help out a lot. You can also follow us on Instagram. There's the podcast version on Apple, Spotify, Podbang, and those links will be provided below if you're watching. And if you'd like to be a guest or a sponsor of the show, feel free to reach us at hallahollapodcast@gmail.com. That's HALLAHOLLA podcast@gmail.com. I've been your host, Marco Sinche, and I hope you join us next time on the next Halla Holla. See ya.